Okay, great. So welcome again to the demo. Um, we've got a lot of stuff, so let's just go ahead and get started. First up, interaction design, we have Gina. She's going to cover compact pagination.
Thanks, Michael. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. So recently there was a problem that came up that pagination was taking up too much room, which is very understandable. And the up here is the current what we offer for pagination, and I proposed this new design here that stripped away some of the pager actions and just kept the item count and then kept the two arrows that lets you page back and forth. So that variation is here within the toolbar. Um, yeah, and as you go, so if you start on this first page and go to the next page, these numbers would update. So technically you could do math to figure out how many pages you have, but we figured that if we took away showing how many pages of the total amount of pages that you're on, then it's less confusing because seeing both of these numbers is a bit contradicting. So that's all.
Great. That looks wonderful. Thanks, Gina. And we've also got you next on updating the PatternFly symbol library with a new Red Hat font.
Yes. Okay. So I just have a preview for this. So I'll share my screen again. So we recently moved to the Red Hat font, and right now we offer a symbol library that has all the components, the PatternFly components, but it uses the Overpass font. So we've been updating that, and so now all the components are using Red Hat font, and I'm just going through and making sure that all of this is correct. So it's like a QA phase right now, and it'll probably be like by the end of the week, we'll have that new template finished, and then you'll get an official message of the new release. And another thing is that this will be, if you've been using the symbol library, this would be a whole nother link. So it would be a completely different library. And that way you can still use the Overpass one if that's not something that you have moved away from in your product or project. Oh.
Awesome. Thanks, Gina. And up next, we have CSS, and Christy is going to talk to us about updating the label alignment and the form component.
Thanks. So for the sprint in core, I just worked on updating the horizontal labels in the form component. So when we have a label that's adjacent to an input with just one line, it has a top padding. So basically this text is aligned with the text that's inputted. And then when we have a label that's adjacent to a text area with multiple lines, it still has that top padding so that it's aligned to the text that's inputted here. And then when we have a label that's adjacent to, say, like checkboxes or like a radio element that isn't a form control element, then that top padding is removed and it's aligned to the top of the container that it's adjacent to. And that's all.
Great. Thank you, Christy. And up next, Sarah with the spinner component.
Okay. So I think I showed this one time before in the very early stages, but it's been completed and released. And in the process, besides that, we have the 4 different sizes that are set to match the our standard spacing sizes, and it works in both light and dark. Besides that, we made a lot of improvements for performance because we don't want the spinner to take up resources when you're trying to do something else. And so we've removed the line narrowing as it went around because that was one of the more intensive processing things for it to do. And now you can see that if I turn on the FPS meter, frame per rate meter, we're at a solid 59.9 out of 60 pretty much. And we've removed everything from the paint layer. Nothing is happening in the needing to be repainted. So it should be very smooth and performant. But that's it.
Very nice. That's great. Thank you, Sarah. Up next, we have Matt Nolting with Flex Layout and split button text.
Thank you, Michael. So yeah, those two updates today. Split button's pretty small. As you can see, there's now text in the split button. You have the checkbox and the drop down. That is an effort to move the bulk select along. So that's a step closer to the bulk select. And then the other update is kind of invisible but important. And it is wrapping all of flex items in an actual flex item so that React can now take that and turn that into a functional layout. And aside from that, we updated a lot of the documentation and cleaned up some of the CSS, so there's no longer a little responsive spacer bug. So it's ready to go. That's all I got. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. And up next, oh, that's me. So I've got, well, I'll just carry you along with the updates. First is for the select, we introduced a custom toggle icon, and I think I have it up here. Here we are. Let's see if I can find it. Probably at the bottom. Yep. Okay. So this is also an effort to get closer to building out cool stuff in the toolbar. This is for a filter type select component that you would use, but you can now put an icon here at the beginning of the select component. It's all the proper spacing and alignment and all of that. Up next, we have an effort to move all of our action buttons and forms and modals to the left. And so the remaining bit of that was with our modal component. Those the actions at the bottom of the modal component were still right aligned. And so we introduced a variation to the modal that's an opt-in for now that you can use to left align the actions in your modal. You'll need to reorder them so that the primary action is on the left and any secondary actions are to the right. So that's in now, and hopefully at some point we'll probably make that the default, so you just get that for free. The next was in-page wizard. So this was a great effort to create a variation of the wizard that doesn't live in a modal. And so you can put this in the context of the page component, and this is just a page demo that we have on the website right now of putting this wizard in place, and it behaves responsively as you might expect from the existing UI of the wizard, just in the context of the page component. And this is really exciting. We've got a dark themed navigation and dark themed sidebar. And these are also both opt-ins currently where you can just apply a class in core or a prop in React to the page sidebar and then the nav component, and it works with all of our navs. And you get this dark version of it. And you can see this on the website with for the page demo or all of the demos for the page component. It should illustrate dark themed navigation. And then the last one was for the drop-down component. We now have a primary drop-down variation. And here it is. So before we just had the single variation of a drop-down. Now if you have a primary drop-down, that you can assign a class or a prop to the toggle inside of the drop-down and get these primary action or primary button styles. And that's it. Okay, Up next on the React side, we have Katie, and she's going to cover some new features or select new features, creatable and new, dark nav opt-in, and a PatternFly 3 update.
Yep, the PatternFly 3 is just a quick update. But first up, we've got the select features. So this sprint, we added creatable and new, which means if you go down to select and go to type ahead, there's these new little flags that you can do. So normally, say if you have your filtered list and you say like test and it's not there, it'll get no results found. But if you toggle the is creatable option, if you do test, now you'll have this create test thing you can click on, and that'll actually select it. It doesn't add it to the list. That is what new does. But you can actually get the callback to return like the on select, and you can clear it as normal. If you use both options and say test, you can click create test, and then it'll be selected. And if you go back to the list, it actually adds it. Now, the example just appends to the end if you're worried about alphabetizing. That's going to be done on the user side because you control what data gets passed back and adding it to your own list. And a quick overview of creatable and new. Next up, we have the dark nav opt-in, which Michael talked about. This is just the React side of it. So you see for our demos here, we've got page component where the navigation is dark and sidebar is dark. And then we've got the nav component where everything's dark. These are both opt-in. So what you do is you specify theme equal to dark, and you'll get these for both the nav and page sidebar components. All of our examples are using dark, but the default is still light. At a later date, we'll be updating the default to dark when we have a breaking change release. And then you can see them both together in the page overall demo, just to see them in real life. And then lastly, the PO3 was just a quick bug fix. If you were using async type ahead for the selects, you couldn't actually reference the inner component, so now you can. And that's about it for me.
Good stuff, Katie. Thank you. And up next, we have Tatani. Left align buttons on a modal and the spinner component.
Tatani asked me to fill in for her because she's stuck in traffic, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Can you guys all see the modal?
Yep, you sure can.
So Tatani worked on adding the class that moves the buttons in the modal to the left, like Michael talked about. And for the spinner component, she also added React support. And there's different modifiers that you can use as props to get the sizes that were mentioned earlier.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah.
And up next, we have Jesse covering some chip group updates.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see this now.
Yep, we can.
Awesome. The first thing I worked on is basically allowing chip group to have a variable number of chips be displayed. So for example, if you use the prop num chips, you can set how many chips are being viewed. So I have the default right now set to 3, but if I change this number, I can change how many chips are viewed at a time. So if you want to customize the chip view, you can now do that. The second thing I worked on is that we noticed there was a class name issue with chip group toolbar item. Basically wasn't being passed down. So I went ahead and fixed that with this PR, and just to show that it works, if you add the class name to it, you can see over here, it's now being passed where it should be. And lastly, to toolbar, we noticed that the toolbar item couldn't handle a single chip, just based on the type of data it was expecting. So I made sure to fix that with this PR, and now you can see that if you add just a single chip, it just shows a single chip. So those are the quick updates I did to chip group. I think that's it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jesse. And up next, we have Joachim with an update on dropdown component.
Yep, thank you. Just a second, trying to get organized. Where is it? Okay, here. Ooh, this is what happens when a demo is at 9 a.m. Okay. All right, so the first thing, the first one is about allowing custom items in the dropdown for the React component. Really the use case that kind of called out for this was being able to use an I18N library to put text in your dropdown components. And up until now, that was kind of broken because of the way that we handle refs. But now you can see in this image, for example, that you can have any kind of custom component in here, and it's being read by our list item styling. So you get the proper spacing and stuff like that. And just to have a live example right here, you can see I've put a couple of custom components in here. And from an accessibility perspective, if you enter into it, you can use your keyboard navigation to go up and down the list as you would expect to. So that's still working. And you should get similar behavior in other components that implement or that use dropdown under the hood, like application launcher, I think, and select. Is that the end of the React section? Because I got one more thing for the website that I think is not on the list yet.
It is, yeah. So go ahead with it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just open up the website section. I think as Michael alluded to earlier or mentioned, we have several opt-in features now. I think one is for the nav and one is for the modal. And in order to make users aware of that on the website side of things, we've added basically an alert for those two components. And the way that that looks is, for example, if you go to the nav, you can see that there's an alert up here that tells you about the opt-in feature and how to use the dark mode. This is running locally. This has not been updated yet, but the examples would all show using the dark mode by default. So you will see that alert soon on the website. And then similarly for the modal, let's see if that works. Yeah, you would also get the alert up at the top. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joachim.
Thank you.
And spinning back around, we have a website update for Gina, from Gina.
Thanks, Michael. So I worked on updating the colors for charts because there was a few bugs that came up since we updated our colors here. And I just changed the, I guess like the hex values were not matching the actual colors. So I updated those, and then there was one of these variables that was incorrect. But those are all good now.
Thanks. Looks great. Christy is going to talk to us about experimental features.
Thanks. So this just follows on from what Joachim just spoke about with the opt-in features. So we decided to shift the design for experimental features to also use this inline info alert that just sits under the title here, and that's for all experimental features. And then when the component is deprecated and it moves to like under the actual component category, this alert will change to a warning alert, and the text will change here. And thanks to Zach for helping me implement this.
Great, thank you. And up again, Gina, design documentation for the sparkline charts.
Thank you. We have a bunch of design documentation already for charts, but recently we added the sparkline, so I just added some visuals and documentation around how to use it, and then updated some of the other sections just to make sure it's differentiated from the other types of charts. And you can see sparklines used in cards as well in that.
Looks great. Thanks a lot, Gina. Okay, well, that's it. No more topics left, so I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the demo, and see you again in a few weeks now, I guess.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.